Okay, welcome in. I'm the Kodiak, and this video is going to be really tough for some people, myself included, to make and to hear. And if JMO turns out to reach his sky-high upside, then it's one of the biggest misses of my Dynasty career, one of the biggest misses on this entire channel, including Zach Wilson. But the fact of the matter is, Jameson Williams is a question mark at this point in his career as an NFL wide receiver. And I'm going to tell you why I think he could be headed in the wrong direction and why I believe he was wildly overdrafted. And at this point, I don't think he was a very good pick for Detroit at 12th overall. People, mostly on the Dynasty subreddit, seem to be delusionally high on him. People are saying, oh, he has so much upside, but I guess they don't really know what constitutes his upside. Just because he has speed and got good capital because of speed, that does not mean anything regarding his situation. I don't hate JMO himself. I hate people who are trying to talk themselves into his ceiling. There are people who say, oh, he would have been the first wide receiver off the board had he not torn his ACL, which, by the way, that's copium to the max. I said it in April 2022. Never at any point in that draft process, which, by the way, yes, this isn't even hindsight. I was around in April 2022. I was around that whole draft season, paying attention to it for dynasty purposes, but the flavor of the month when he tore his ACL was Treylon Burks. After that, it was a combination of London, Olave, and Wilson, while Treylon was sliding down draft boards. But in no way at any point was JMO ever projected to be the first wide receiver off the board. And what's even more laughable to me is that people had JMO in the same tier as Olave and Wilson when Jameson Williams had to transfer out of Ohio State because of those two. And the main argument against that is, well, Burrow transferred because of Haskins. And my counter-argument to that is that Joe Burrow is the Tom Brady of college quarterbacks, not with how great he was, but because of how much of a one-and-one outlier he is. And yes, JMO did not even break the 200-yard threshold his freshman and sophomore years at Ohio State. And I won't deny that part of the reason that happened is because you're just going to get buried on a depth chart that good. Like, it could happen no matter how good of a high school prospect you are. But everyone transfers now in college football. But the odds of you becoming a difference maker if you transfer for any reason other than like a coaching change, i.e. because of playing with NFL talent, is not great. He originally went into OSU as a 4-star from St. Louis, which is a breeding ground for athletes. Ohio State is littered with wide receiver talent. But if you can't develop your game there, of all places, there are legitimately very few where you actually can. Luckily, he did go to another one of those schools, which in recent years has given us guys like Judy, Smith, and Waddle. And the top-end wide receivers from Ohio State are better than the top-end wide receivers from Bama. I'll take Wilson, Olave, MHJ over Judy, Smith, and Waddle. So he goes to Alabama, where his only competition for real targets is John Mechie, prayers up, who even before his unfortunate diagnosis, I thought was really not that good. But JMO broke out in a huge way, but late breakout is not necessarily indicative of success at the NFL level. In fact, the opposite. So he put up 1,500 yards at Bama, which, by the way, wicked production. No other way to put it. He tears his ACL in the playoff, which was very unfortunate, and a particular example why I think guys projected to get drafted at any point shouldn't even consider playing in late college football games if they don't have to. I don't care how much you love the school you play for. The financial implications of missing NFL important practice time and games early on, especially, are just not worth it. And yes, the idea of financial implications goes back to hindering your development as a player, because you look at the company Jameson Williams is in as far as commanding targets his rookie year, it's really, really, really bad. 9 targets in your first 6 games, I do not care what injury you're dealing with, is beyond pathetic. Yes, he was recovering from an ACL. And he may not have been fully healthy. Part of this goes to the fact that Detroit is kind of reckless when it comes to decision-making and personnel. More on that later, by the way. But he was still out there, and they were probably a bit conservative with getting him on the field. But commanding volume is a skill in itself, and while I think it matters more that you are efficient on the volume that you are given, which, by the way, he's averaging 41 yards per reception, so how's that for efficiency? The fact that JMO is still a question mark leaves a lot of questions open rather than answers. We haven't even gotten into something else. There are supposed character concerns with JMO. I'm not talking about the typical concerns regarding guys that are about to be drafted, like, oh, he beat his teammate up in high school, or oh, he's in a toxic relationship. And I'm not even going to talk about the gambling, because while that happened and it's irresponsible to do it after Calvin Ridley, that's just low-hanging fruit and isn't really relevant to the overall point of this video. The coaches in Detroit admitted that they had hoped that it would quote-unquote click faster with Jameson Williams. The 4th of July thing, which, by the way, also, I'm not going to criticize JMO for living life, but to take a video of you using a lighter to light fireworks, like one of those, not even one of those like stem ones, like one of those, I don't even know what they're called. It's dumb. You can look it up. To take a video of it and post it to your Instagram after what happened to Jason Pierre-Paul, just dumb, irresponsible, everything about it. Like I said, not going to criticize the guy for living life, but you like the tweet saying they need to get the ball in his hands. Brad Holmes publicly stated, "We want JMO to be accountable." It's super cryptic, and it says a lot if you're publicly willing to say that for a guy you traded up 20 spots to draft in 2022. Haven't even gotten into something else. The Capitol is meaningless to me. The Lions are building something special, and they're a great story being on the up and up. They now have the 4th best odds to win the whole NFC. And the jury is still kind of out at this point. But the fact that he was drafted 12th overall says way more to me about the Detroit Lions and Brad Holmes than Jameson Williams. This team has made some very, very questionable choices in the Holmes era. The hits are massive. You got to give them props on stuff like Amon-Ra. Hutchinson was an easy pick, so I mean, I guess we don't really need to talk about that. Everybody thinking Goff was garbage when Detroit clearly saw something in him. But Chark didn't pan out. Demon's contract I wasn't a fan of. They suddenly decided they hated Okudah and Swift and wanted to be off of both of them, letting Jamal Williams walk when he was the heart and soul of that locker room. You wildly overdraft Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell when you were in a position to draft a premium player at 6th overall. First of all, Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta, which are who they ended up getting with 12th and 34th overall, they're probably going to be absolute ballers, but give me any of those guys who went in the 6 through 9 range, any of which Detroit could have had over Jahmyr and Laporta in a heartbeat. And I get the Hendon Hooker pick in the early 3rd, but as a prospect, I just simply was not a fan. And you do not want to be in a position where you're relying on a 25-year-old rookie, let alone a 3rd-round quarterback, to be your backup. Because honestly, you look at any quarterback drafted since 2017 in the 3rd round or later, and the only semi-startable ones out of that bucket of 2017 to 2022 quarterbacks drafted in the 3rd round or later are Gardner Minshew and Brock Purdy. And I know this was more of a let's see what we have sort of thing, but for a team in their contention window, an early 3rd round pick can get you a really, really solid contributor. Then again, what do I know? I thought the only pick that was actually kind of good from this upcoming draft was Brian Branch. This is the same franchise that was fine trading TJ Hawkinson to the division-leading Vikings at one point of the year. So I know I just kind of went on a tangent about the Lions management, and basically what I'm trying to get at is the fact that they traded up 20 spots to draft Jameson Williams says way more about the Lions and not being able to properly evaluate assets than it does about JMO. It's an aggressive league, and the Lions are building something special. But JMO is the theory at this point, and a lot of the news coming out of Detroit regarding JMO has been very, very negative. But the mystery is the fun part. He could be a game breaker. He could be Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I'm not even going to deny it because I'm not going to deny the actual upside that he does have. On the other side of the spectrum, he could very, very well be a glorified Kadarius Toney. And I won't criticize him for being hurt. I will criticize Detroit for throwing him back out there if he wasn't 100%, but bro just did not get on the field, and he did not earn any targets. JMO is such a unique sample because I can't find a precedent of wide receivers who have one catch in their first 23 career games ever really panning out to be difference makers at the next level. I'm not calling him a bad player. Not even close. That's an unfair label. I will definitely call him a bad pick at this point. 100%. If he becomes the player that the Lions thought he would be, he'll make me look very dumb. But like I said, this guy's the literal mystery box, and I don't know where we go from here. I don't know where you go from here if you're Jameson Williams, but yeah. All right, that does it for me, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.